Hello, I'm Gail Showalter. I had many experiences that increased my faith while I was a single mother. One such experience happened when my middle child was 9 years old. As a single mother of 3 for 5 years, I'd managed to control most of the dilemmas we faced. I was determined to overcome each obstacle without depending on others. This little hiccup would be just another one in our day in, day out struggles, or so I thought. When my 9-year-old son, Damon, complained, "Mom, my stomach hurts," I thought he had a virus. Hours later, he was curled up in a tight ball, unaware of his older sister, Treva, and younger brother, Lance, playing nearby. And I knew that this was not a virus. My knees buckled with fear as I scooped up his drooping body and carried him to the car. His thin limbs spread out on the car seat like a worn-out stuffed toy. I prodded and hustled the other children into the back seat and sped to the doctor's office. Dr. Forsythe rushed in and examined Damon quickly. He spoke with clipped and quick phrases. "I think his appendix has ruptured. We must get him to the hospital right away," he said, without looking up from the report he was writing. Surely they can fix it, I thought. I can handle this. My take-charge manner took over. My mom came and took the other children home with her. "We don't have time to wait for an ambulance. You'll drive him to the hospital." The grave tone in the doctor's voice was alarming. "The surgeon is waiting for you in the emergency room." My thoughts switched to automatic replay. Appendix ruptured. Surgeons waiting. I'd heard of appendicitis. People get it all the time. I wasn't as sure about the ruptured part. I gripped the wheel and flipped on the emergency flashers and drove as fast as reasonably safe. The surgeon and staff were waiting. Dr. Adams touched Damon's tight, swollen tummy gently. His eyes met mine, and he frowned. Even this seasoned surgeon seemed surprised as he said, "His appendix has ruptured." He ordered the staff, "Set up the surgery stat." My heart seemed to stall. A trembling started from my gut and worked its way to my fingertips. I had no choice. My child's life was totally out of my control. I called Damon's dad at work, and the anesthesiologist came clip-clopping down the hall in his wooden shoes. He was Dutch, and his wooden shoes added to the unreal feel of the situation. Was I watching television? Was this a drama? This couldn't be as bad as it appeared to be. I was always the one in charge. What could happen? They prepped Damon for surgery. I stood by helpless, watching the medical staff performing specific tasks with deliberate actions. Damon grew sleepy from the sedatives, and I ached to hold him, as I had when he was a colicky baby. But he lay helpless, nearly unconscious. The white linens, white straps across his legs, and white uniforms created an image of pure light. But darkness filled my heart with denial. This couldn't be. He was jumping, laughing, and playing yesterday. I walked beside the stretcher, rolling its way to the operating room. In the sterile corridor outside the entrance doors to surgery, Damon lay on the stretcher under crisp sheets tightly in place, with his little arms folded across his chest, almost as pale as the linens that held him. He looked like a corpse. "Say goodbye to your son," the nurse said. A resistance yelled from the depth of my being. "No!" The echo came back. "No!" Followed by no choice. The swinging doors swallowed him. I stood alone in the endless hallway, powerless, choiceless, and alone. We attended church regularly, almost as if by doing so I could control everything in our lives. I prayed, but never so desperately as that day. My prayers were sincere, but I expected more from myself than of my Lord. God, please, I need you now, I pleaded. Bob, Damon's father, arrived. He said very little. Our conversations seldom came easily and often involved conflict, but now we were united in the profound desire for the well-being of our son. Silence spoke loudly in the tiny waiting room. A long hour passed. He is lucky to be alive, the surgeon was speaking as he came through the door. His ruptured appendix has splattered poison throughout his abdominal cavity and resulted in peritonitis, a severe infection. This could have been a deadly situation, he said. I never left Damon's hospital room. I slept curled up on an uncomfortable two-seat sofa when I slept. He wasn't going to have a snappy recovery. I couldn't kiss him and make it all better. I couldn't make the pain go away. I laid my head next to his on the hospital bed and held his hand and hid the fear on my face. He clung to me as I clung to hope that his body would respond to the medicine. The pain tortured his young body. Dark circles formed under his blue eyes. He wouldn't eat. My Aunt Villa came to visit and asked him, "What would you like to eat if you could have anything in the world?" A faint smile crossed Damon's glum face. "Pancakes," he replied. She nodded and left. In short order, she returned with a plate of homemade pancakes. Damon finally ate and licked the syrup from his lips. Visitors came with gifts and get-well cards, many filled with cash. The room was soon adorned with helium-filled balloons and computer-generated banners. He must walk, the nurses insisted. The movement would jumpstart his system. But how could I cause him to suffer more? His young face twisted with the acute agony that every step caused. Long and weary days passed before he could move without excruciating pain. He slowly seemed to improve. 5 days later, he was released and we went home. Too soon. 2 hours later, he was doubled over in severe pain with a urinary blockage. "Bring him back. We will take care of your son," Dr. Forsythe told me on the phone. He seemed so sure. I had doubts. I was faltering as control slipped out of my hands again. They readmitted him to the same room, minus the decorations. Damon lay medicated, as fragile and still as a sleeping kitten. Specialists insisted that more tests were necessary. A lump formed in my throat and tears pooled in my eyes. They wheeled him off into another corridor of this hospital for an ultrasound. The ultrasound showed globs of pus like hailstones were stuck throughout his lower abdominal cavity. Soon, tubes were hung and needles carried powerful antibiotics into his bruised arms. I watched the drip, drip, drip of the IV, willing the mysterious liquid to clean the poison from my boy's body. What next? Will he heal? Is there permanent damage? I was emotionally spent, no longer the mom in control. Fear had taken hold and fatigue was its partner. My dear friend, Tappy, came. "Come with me," she said. She led me to the tiny chapel in the hospital and pulled me to the front pew and slid her arm around my shoulder and prayed. All trust in my control was gone. First, she prayed for Damon's recovery, and then she began to pray for my strength to return. That was when a force of words welled up and spilled from my mouth. I said aloud, I am like the tree that grows by the river of waters. I am like the tree that grows by living water. I may bend, but I will not break. I wasn't thinking. Words came without any effort on my part, as if from a source beyond me. You've carried me through before, Lord. I trust you are with me now. My hope restored and fear left. Tappy went home, and I went back to my son's room to remain for a few more days. When I slept, I kept one hand resting on Damon. He knew I was there for him and would not leave. Soon, Damon was healing and pushing his IV cart up and down the halls. His bare bottom, blinking from behind his hospital gown, gave the nurses something to smile about. At last, he was well enough to leave the hospital for good. Mother came to drive us home. As I packed our things, Damon whispered in Mom's ear. Then he grinned at me and said, "We'll be right back." He pulled her by the hand out the door towards the tiny gift shop that usually carried only candy, stuffed toys, and cards. When Damon came back, he wore a wide grin. He used most of the cash he received to buy me a present. Neither he nor my mother knew the significance of this unlikely gift. I had not expected a love gift, especially this. He held out a box for me, more than a gift. It was a tangible token of a prayer heard, a message that the Lord had heard my words in the chapel. I opened the box to find real verification of God's presence. It was a golden, shimmering tree.